Good morning. A warm welcome to the Humanist community in Silicon Valley Sunday Forum. To those joining us this morning, my name is Ray Sunby, President of the Humanist community. The Humanist community is a chapter of the American Humanist Association. Humanism is a secular and reality-based philosophy of life that affirms our ability and responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good. We value freedom, health, happiness, fairness, compassion, and using science and reason to acquire and apply knowledge. If these words describe your thinking, we invite you to become a member of the Humanist community if you've not yet done so. Membership forms are available on our website at humanists.org. A special welcome to those who are with us for the first time. We invite you to continue listening to our weekly forums and other events. You can find all our events listed on the website, again, humanists.org. Please aid us in continuing to present these forums by donating to the Humanist community. You can find out how to donate to our organization on our website, www.humanists.org, or you can probably find the link in the chat.
Okay. My name is Alex Havasi. I'm Vice President of the Humanist community. Our scheduled speaker today was the author and blogger Megan Rahm. She unfortunately will not be able to make it today. Instead, we're fortunate to have Scott Wakefield, who will give us a talk on the psychology of conspiracy theories. We have a program committee, and it's been rather inactive in the past few months. So if anyone would like to join the program committee, that is, if you can recommend speakers, if you've seen speakers who you think would be good, and you have contact information, that would be great. Also, if you'd like to give a talk, let me know. You can contact me at, use vp@humanists.org. Okay, with that said, I guess let me introduce our speaker then. Scott, you're on.
Oh, hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to our meeting today. I mentioned I went to earlier, there's a forum at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Palo Alto this morning, and I mentioned that I didn't get much sleep because I had a talk to give, and I'd heard that public speaking is the thing people are most afraid of. And someone corrected me. They said, no, it's clowns that people are most afraid of. So we have nothing to fear this morning. How I got started on this topic. It's someone in my family who sent me a link to a webinar that she was very excited about and thought I should attend. And I took a look at the link that she sent, and it was a week-long webinar. And you know, if you act now, you can see it, and it was going to go away. Lots of really well-developed motivational stuff, you know, like scarcity and so forth. And I looked at some of the names, and it's our old friends. What is his name? Joseph Kennedy Jr. is big in anti-vax. And I saw the name Andrew Wakefield, no relation. And so I thought, well, you know, I need to kind of at least try to attack this head on, to speak with her and have a little discussion. But in the first few, just looking at the introductory material, I mean, there was so much stuff without even clicking on the link to start the webinar. There was so much stuff. So I didn't do that, but I didn't give up yet. And so what I found was a book. All right, now I'm going to share my screen. Let's view. I can do this. This is my first slideshow in Google Docs. How about that, huh? Look at this great book. What a resource for me, The Psychology of Conspiracy Theories. So I read the book, and I still haven't undertaken my project to have a discussion with this person. But in the meantime, I can share with you what I learned. This is a great book a few years back. This fellow, I think, is a professor in the Netherlands. And so let's dive right in. To start with, what is a conspiracy theory? And I mean, it's a big topic. So let's start by saying what it's not. Oops. Oh, I have to hit here, and then I can click here. There we go. So what is a conspiracy not? Okay, it's not a theory if, in fact, it has turned out to be true. And here's some big examples. For 40 years in the 20th century, the United States government approached African-American males and said, okay, we've got this experiment. We will give you medical care. We'll take care of you. All you have to do is sign up for this experiment. And in secret, what they were doing was they were not taking care of them. It really happened. In 1942, there was a villa near Berlin called Wannsee. A bunch of high-ranking Nazi officials gathered some government officials from various levels in the German government, and they explained to them, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to murder the Jewish population of our country. It really happened. The Allies, you know, they heard a lot of rumors, but it wasn't until about 1947 that someone came across, you know, the proceedings, and it was just all there. 1972, there was some talk about a burglary at the Democratic Committee, I forget now, at the Watergate Hotel in Washington, D.C. And of all things, you know, at first this came out kind of slowly. So it something that you heard about, no one knew if it was true or not. But then, what do you know? Richard Nixon had actually wiretapped his own office, and we could hear them talking about it. Iran-Contra, there was support for the Nicaraguas, explicitly forbidden by act of Congress. There was sale of arms to Iran, explicitly forbidden by act of Congress. But the sale of arms was, the money was then channeled into support for the Contras. It really happened. Angela Merkel's personal cell phone tapped by the US Secret Service. None of these is a conspiracy theory because it really happened. It was a conspiracy, but it wasn't a conspiracy theory. So now this book was written, as I say, by a professor. So he cites actual, you know, studies. And here's a study that was done in 1973 before, as I say, you know, Watergate at one point was a theory. So back before a lot of these details came out, they did some studies. They, you know, polled some people. And what they found was that if you measure how much people distrust others in their daily life, the people who distrust others more were more likely to be able to perceive a conspiracy involving the President of the United States. They also found that Democrats, of course, Nixon was a Republican, Democrats were more likely than Republicans to spot a conspiracy brewing. Conspiracy theories are important. We had a war based on a conspiracy theory. Here's a quote by a certain individual. Right now, Iraq is expanding and improving facilities that were used for the production of biological weapons. The next year, the same individual said, intelligence gathered by this and other governments leaves no doubt that the Iraq regime continues to possess and conceal some of the most lethal weapons ever devised. And on the basis of this conspiracy theory, the United States went to war. Now, using this as an example, let me just hide floating meeting controls. Using this conspiracy theory as an example, let's look at what we're going to define as a conspiracy theory. 5 parts. You see that there's a pattern. And in this case, there's a threat and Iraq is causing it. That's this conspiracy theory. Second, there's some entity that's doing it on purpose. Third is that there's a coalition, there's a group of people doing this. In this case, the Saddam Hussein administration. So there are, of course, important cases where a lone individual will be plotting something in secret, but we're not going to call that a conspiracy theory. So fourth, hostility is part of a conspiracy theory. And in this case, Iraq is said to be developing weapons of mass destruction. And the last part is that there's secrecy that continues. Iraq is concealing these weapons. I want to show a little video. Here's another example of a widely held conspiracy theory. Now he's being interviewed on television, and at the beginning he's talking about Dick Gregory, and he's talking about chemtrails. You've heard. Let's hear what he has to say.
We're not getting the audio. There.
Let me share again. Thanks for telling me. This button, maybe? Can you hear him now?
My friends, I show it to everybody who comes over the house, especially white folks, because they need to hear
Yes.
that.
What is that?
You know,
It's
so
very
that they know
soft.
more about all
What is that?
I don't know what I can do something about it. This gentleman
of us.
is
Because
the artist formerly known as Prince. He's no longer with us, but he was a big deal years ago. I've turned up the volume.
me and a lot of my friends, I show it to everybody who comes over the house, especially white folks, because they need to hear that, you know, so that they know more about all of us. Because what he said affects all of us. He said something that really hit home about this phenomena of chemtrails. And, you know, when I was a kid, I used to see these trails in the sky all the time. And say, oh, that's cool. A jet just went over. And then you started to see a whole bunch of them. And the next thing you know, everybody in your neighborhood was fighting and arguing, and you didn't know why. Okay? And you really didn't know why. I mean, everybody was fighting. So he started riffing about the chemtrails. And
Oh, I've got muted. Okay. So here's some of the words that he said. You can hear me now, yes? I hope.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, good.
Yes.
So here's a big conspiracy theory. It was a lot of people believed it. A lot of people still believe it. And then when Prince died unexpectedly, that just adds to it, right? Now we've got a conspiracy theory that Prince was murdered for telling the truth about chemtrails. Now, I, for a long time, and even now, I tend to say, you know, these conspiracy theories, I mean, they're just silly. And the people, you know, it's just frivolous. It's not important. But you can't just say, oh, there's something wrong with these people, because it's just so widespread. So here's a conspiracy theory. The Food and Drug Administration is deliberately preventing the public from getting natural cures for cancer and other diseases because of pressure from drug companies. 31% of the public of the United States agree with this statement, and 31% neither agree nor disagree. This is very widespread. Here's another one, conspiracy theory regarding the 9/11 attacks on the United States. The US government officials knew that the 9/11 attacks were coming and deliberately failed to act. If you ask people in New York City, 49% agree. US officials carried out the attacks or deliberately did nothing to stop them. In the United States as a whole, 36% of the people agree with this statement. I also used to think that this was something new. Now, in this book, the author points to a study looking at letters to the editor for the years 1890 to 2010 for two big newspapers in the United States, the Chicago Tribune, the New York Times, 100,000 letters to the editor. And they found no upwards trend in the proportion of letters containing conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories are a natural reaction to societal situations that elicit feelings of fear and uncertainty. So examples of this are a disease epidemic, which have happened a couple times in the last century, economic crisis or financial crisis. I'm not sure of the difference between those two. Natural disaster, revolution, terrorist attack, as we've discussed, and war. Let's look at some examples of this. In the 1300s, the Black Death, a terrible, terrible disease situation, Jewish people had their own wells. And the Christians said, hey, look at those Jewish people, they're using their own wells. Maybe they've poisoned our wells, yeah. Another crisis, or a couple of them, was the Reformation in the hundreds of years ago, and also the 30 Years' War. And during these times, witch hunts proliferated. During the Second Industrial Revolution, more than 100 years ago, when many jobs were replaced by machines, that was a crisis. And that, by the way, was a time when, as I said, they did the study of letters to the editor. They didn't find a trend, but they did find during this time that there was a little increase in conspiracy theories. And a second time when they noticed a little increase in conspiracy theories was after World War II. There was a fear of a new world war, and the communist conspiracy that perhaps one of the best known advocates of that was Senator Joseph McCarthy. Another kind of crisis is an event that captures the attention of a large audience, and fear and uncertainty distress among many citizens, such as the unexpected death of a celebrity. And one example of this is the assassination of President Kennedy in 1964. Also, sort of a chronic ongoing crisis would be if someone believes that the government continuously deceives the nation. Then you'll have a feeling that the nation is in crisis. And that would make you skeptical of any government action. And an example of this might be the conspiracy theory that the moon landings in 1969 were filmed in a TV studio and didn't actually happen on the surface of the moon. Now, an explanation for this, we talked about fear and uncertainty. These are signals that there are imminent threats in the environment. So what a person would do as a response to that is they would start to pay close attention to the environment around them. They would try to establish the causes of their feelings of fear and uncertainty. It would make them more averse to risk and to assume the worst. And as a sidelight to this, there's been psychological studies to show that people overestimate the extent to which the behavior of others is driven by self-interest. If you assume the worst, people have a tendency to assume the worst of groups that are powerful and hence could cause great harm, groups that they perceive as different, and groups that they are uncomfortable with. So, for example, a government institution has a lot of power, a major company has a lot of power, and minority groups are perceived as different, and there may be a lack of comfort. There's also this idea that if there's a big consequence, then it must have had a big cause. So if you're considering 9/11, which had a big consequence, to say that it's caused by government is more grandiose than to say it's caused by terrorists. The government would mean that that there was a conspiracy involving more people, more deception, and of course the government has more power. So what we're talking about is a belief. A belief is an unproven conviction about the state of reality, and we all have them. All beliefs help people make sense of an uncertain situation. You could have a belief in supernatural ideas, such as telepathy, spiritual healing, astrology, a belief that you can look at the stars and that will affect what happens to us on Earth. If you have supernatural beliefs, you are more likely to have conspiracy theory beliefs. Also, someone who is convinced of one conspiracy theory is more likely to believe in others. This is just, empirically measured. I want to talk about a couple of different thinking styles. And it's not like, well, one we'll call intuitive thinking style. It's sort of a gut feel. It's a sort of something that you experience as a reflex. It's not, there's a word heuristic for this sort of thing, sort of an automatic response, and it happens effortlessly. There's another kind of thinking style we might call analytic, where you consider with care information that you have, and you take the time to reflect on the information you have. This is something that requires effort and requires concentration. People with intuitive thinking style are more likely to subscribe to supernatural beliefs and conspiracy theories. And I would add to this that we all have both, both kinds. Anyway, and people with analytic thinking style are a little less likely to subscribe to these things. Now, when do we perceive patterns? You can perceive a pattern, when there is a pattern. You can also perceive a pattern when you're dealing with chance or uncertain outcomes. For example, if you're at the casino or at the racetrack, you're playing roulette or blackjack. They've studied people who participate in these activities, and they find that if there are many even numbers in a row, then they're more likely to bet on an uneven number. Also, if they're experiencing, a sequence of wins, a lucky streak, they're likely to increase their bets. And conversely, if the bank has been doing well, they're likely to switch tables at the casino. There's a correlation. A tendency to perceive patterns in random stimuli predicts habitual gambling. Some studies find that people susceptible to supernatural beliefs are more likely to perceive patterns in randomness. Now, some studies, so this, this correlation is more likely in the general population than in college students. I don't quite know what to make of that little, but I'll just throw it out there for you. The more clearly participants saw patterns in abstract paintings, the more likely they were to believe in conspiracy theories as well as supernatural phenomena. So I have a little example here. Okay, I want us to contemplate this celebrated work of art. And when you get the meaning, let me know. Sorry, I'm being snide. I apologize. So we're living our lives, we're looking at the world, and we might say, oh, it looks like someone's behind this. Recognizing intentionality in the actions of others, agency detection. I'd like to share with you now a 1-minute animation of some simple geometric figures. These clearly are not alive. They do not have real emotions or intentions. But when they showed this to participants, all participants came up with stories that ascribed agency to these figures. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to share that now. There's no sound, so we're going to be silent here for 1 minute.
So let's say you have to read an...
Wasn't that exciting?
I believe whoever put those shoes up, I didn't do it on purpose. It looked very dramatic.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. There is. Many supernatural beliefs assume some sort of agency. For example, a religion may assume a God that has motivations to reward or punish people for their actions. A ghost or a person in the afterlife may still be around somewhere, and that ghost might have its own emotions and wishes and desires. And fortune telling assumes certain events are meant to happen, that there is a purpose in the form of a predetermined future. You may have a good or a bad experience in your life. You may meet a new lover, you may get a new job offer, contract a dangerous disease, you may suffer a loss, and you may make sense of such an experience, saying things happen for a reason, or someone or something planned all of this to happen for reasons that we don't know. Conspiracy theories assume that an act was carried out on purpose. People may feel pride for their group as a collective narcissism, which would be an exaggerated belief in the group's superiority. For example, you may say the greatest country on earth, that's my country. It would imply that other groups are inferior, and also it may include the belief that other groups are morally inferior and may be part of an evil conspiracy to harm your great in-group. In virtually all wars that have been fought in recent history, both sides had strong conspiracy theories about the enemy. Conspiracy theories are more likely among people who endorse extremist beliefs, and I'll have a little list, such as an aversion against societal elites, and also extreme ideologies tend to be nationalistic. And you may wonder, okay, are conspiracy theories more prevalent on the left, more prevalent on the right? Both communist and fascist leaders spread conspiracy theories about enemy groups. So there's this book called Mein Kampf, 1925, and it said there was a Jewish conspiracy theory behind the German defeat in World War I. There was a Jewish conspiracy behind the rapid economic decline that followed World War I. Communism was the result of Jewish conspiracy for world domination. This is all in the same book. Capitalism was the result of Jewish conspiracy for world domination, both. And Joseph Stalin believed that a Jewish conspiracy theory was responsible for the rise of Nazism. So, man, that's a conspiracy theory that, talk about your multi-purpose tool. This is that list that I was promising you of extremist fringe groups, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Army of God, Lambs of Christ, Jewish extremist groups, People's Temples, Aryan Nations, the Ku Klux Klan, British People's Party, Red Army faction. In all of these groups, if you look at their formal documents, if you listen to the recorded speeches of the group leaders, you find conspiracy theories. Jewish conspiracy theories control world government. World government itself, that's a conspiracy. Western conspiracy to destroy Islam. So as I said, you know, it's too widespread to be pathological. In fact, a conspiracy theory happens regularly. It's predictable. It's a response to fear and uncertainty. Pattern recognition is something we need to live. Agency detection, it's something we need to live. These things are common and functional, and what exacerbates them is fear and uncertainty, and it causes illusory pattern perception and agency. Now, humans are social, feel the need to belong to a group. A group membership becomes a part of our identity. We may feel that our group is superior to others, and fear and uncertainty increases perceived differences, which may cause the perception of an outgroup as threatening, intergroup conflict, and a conspiracy theory. There's a couple concepts here that also get thrown into the mix. One is called compensatory conviction. If you're feeling uncertain in a certain area, a certain domain, you might tend to compensate for it with increased certainty in other domains. There's also a concept of ephemeral gains, which I think also came into play after World War I, where you have a short-lived period of prosperity with a period of critical losses, and that can lead to societal unrest, and an extremist movement can offer a simple solution to restore the previous glory, ephemeral gains. Now, you know, when it comes to feelings, a rational argument, I don't know, it's not your, it helps, it helps. So education can help to decrease a conspiracy theory. Here's an example. After the 9/11 attacks, some people, you know, brought up the fact that jet fuel, which is made of kerosene, when it burns, it's not hot enough to melt steel. This is a true statement. But if you get past that and point out that while it doesn't melt it, burning kerosene is hot enough to weaken steel enormously, so that the steel structure of the World Trade Center is no longer able to support the weight of the top floors. You can also try to address the fear and uncertainty. Feeling empowered lets you feel in control. It makes you a little less suspicious and helps to reduce conspiracy theories. This is my last point. I just want to review 4 kind of styles that you can have in leadership. You can have a despotic leadership style, which is very authoritarian, my way or the highway. A laissez-faire leadership style, which only intervenes when absolutely necessary. We'll lump those together and call them a pair of destructive leadership styles. Moving on, you could have a charismatic leadership style in which you inspire others to adopt the goals of the organization as their own. And the last one on the list here is a participative leadership style in which you try to include your followers in your decision. And we'll call these 2 constructive leadership styles. Now, when it comes to conspiracy beliefs, the 2 destructive styles increase insecurity, and that leads to stronger conspiracy beliefs. The charismatic style they've found, I don't know what kind of study they dreamed up to measure this, they found that there was no change in conspiracy beliefs. But the participative style, the followers felt empowered, and the followers said that the decisions were fair, transparent, and accountable. And so that feeling of empowerment tended to result in less conspiracy beliefs. And I don't have a big bang ending slide. I hope it helped. Thank you for listening. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Scott. I see a couple of hands up. Dana, Jerry.
Yeah, so you talk about a lot of these things and you refer to them as a conspiracy theory. And early on, you said a conspiracy theory is something that's not true. So you're basically stating that a whole bunch of those things, for a fact, are not true. How do you know that?
Because I'm on the inside.
Oh, you're one of the masters of the universe, huh?
And I'm not even Jewish.
I see.
Greg, I notice I'm not able to lower someone's hands. I assume that's because I'm not a co-host.
Well, I can lower it.
Okay.
Sorry to give you a flippant answer. I mean, in the correct answer would be that we need to. When I said that there was intuitive thinking and analytic thinking, and I said there were people who tend to one and tend to the other, but of course we're all a mixture. And so your first reaction will be the this intuitive, and you need to take a second look, calmly look at the facts and weigh things. What are the chances that a huge number of people are keeping this secret, and so forth.
Well, specifically, I'm thinking about the 1972, the Watergate Break-In. That break-in happened in June of 72. And in November 72, Nixon got elected or re-elected. 49 states voted for him. Only Massachusetts and DC didn't vote for him. So it appears to me that most people did not believe in the theory that there was a break-in. And eventually they changed their minds. Why? Because a lot of facts came out. There was some reason to suspect it even before the election. But You talk about you need to look at the facts. Well, you may not have all the facts. It's like I happen to be one of those who says, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Oswald was the sole person, but he had connections to the CIA and the KGB, so it's suspicious. And let's see, one other thing I wanted to point out was that people who fear that governments are doing bad things, there's certainly a history of governments doing a lot of things. In fact, Howard Zinn once said emphatically, governments lie. So there's, these conspiracy theories, they don't come out of the blue. I'm done.
Kenita, I see your hand up.
I was wondering how the word theory got turned on its head. I mean, in science, a theory is the most well-researched, best documented explanation for something. It is the closest thing to actually being true that we know of. So how did a conspiracy theory get to be something that was false? Yeah, only something that was false. You said it's not a conspiracy theory if it's true.
That's a great point. My impression is that the word theory in this context does mean something different than it does in science. I mean, in science, science takes an open-minded approach that everything is subject to revision. And this is just what we're concluding based on, what we know today. So for example, light has a speed, and then relativity came along, and now we have to, modify this a little bit. If I give this talk again, thank you very much. I need to address that.
Okay. Susan, are you raising your hand? Or Roy?
Oh, okay. Yes. This sounds like it's not quite on the spot, but bear with me. A couple of days ago, we went to the Van Gogh thing in San Jose, and it was awesome. What they did was reestablish Van Gogh in a motion picture thing that, for instance, one flower passed in front of another flower. He did not do that himself. We had to guess, and I think the tool is object-oriented software. Now, okay, that's the introduction of object-oriented software. I think that you can take that same tool and play around with it and be able to establish truth that is logically there. It separates, statistics into reality. So I'm just suggesting somebody approach object-oriented software and
off the top, they don't interfere with the.
Well, Jim, I don't know how to do it.
Hello? Anybody got any idea about object-oriented software that can handle our dilemmas?
I know a little about object-oriented software, but I'm not sure what about the dilemmas you think it would solve.
Stay tuned. That's all I have to say. I'm 91 years old, and I'm beyond the use. I started working with object-oriented software in using C programming language, and when C dropped into Windows,
C++.
that was almost impossible for me.
Let's try to focus the questions on the presentation for a while, and then we'll get to open discussion later.
Alex, you're muted.
I notice I don't see the raised hands in the chat room, but I see them on the screen. I hadn't noticed that. Okay, Oded, why don't you go?
Yeah, I have two subjects. One is there are three completely independent words: theory, conspiration, and the combination. Today, this combination of two words are completely different. It's not theory, it's not conspiration. It's its own subject. It has its own life. It's like mother, father, and child, which is completely independent. And then you try to call it conspiracy theory. There's nothing like that. This is a new object which is modern. This is one comment. Second comment is, today we think we know everything. We have science. Everything is correct. If you go 2,000 years ago, it was completely. What would happen if we try to get science that will be in 2,000 years from now? Will our science will stand the what called the future, or will be different? Because we think today that we know today everything, and this is incorrect. In 2,000 years, probably will be different. Like we today, our thinking is completely different than was 2,000 years ago. So we have to have no such a confidence that all our statistics, all our scientific tools are really the right tools. Maybe we have to think that we are limited. We're not infinite. We are just human, and we have our own ethics. And you know that human ethics is different from one place to another. Human ethics is different from one time to another. So I think we have to accept that what we are is what we are. This is basically what I want to say. So to a subject is one, conspiracy theory is a new item stand by itself. Secondly, don't we be so sure that being very scientific will give us the right answer? It'll be the right answer for today as we understand it today. It will not be the right answer for 2,000 years from now, if you survive.
Okay. George.
Yeah. A couple things, observations I don't think were brought up in the presentation. I think that one reason that people believe in conspiracies and conspiracy theories is because there are so many conspiracies. Conspiracies are just all over the place. We all engage in them all the time. They happen at work. They happen among friends. Conspiracies are a very natural thing, and usually not too significant. I think that one thing that distinguishes the conspiracy theories of this mass delusion type that we're talking about is the supposed size of them. Now, conspiracies often don't hold up because it's hard for people to keep secrets. But when you have a huge number of people all involved in a conspiracy, it becomes ridiculously hard to keep it secret. I think that the big lie conspiracy that the election was stolen is a conspiracy that requires the cooperation of thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people in working elections locally all over the country in order to pull it off, and they'd have to retain complete secrecy. And I think that that unlikelihood that a huge conspiracy could be kept secret is one of the distinguishing marks of the mass illusion.
Yeah, I think something Scott pointed out is that this all occurred during the COVID. A lot of this occurred during the COVID epidemic, which, from what you, Scott, said, makes people a little more susceptible to conspiracies. The stress does. Paul, you had your hand up. Did you want to say anything?
Well, let me just go ahead. I decided not to comment, but it seems to me conspiracy theory as a thing is kind of unuseful, not useful. A theory is an explanation of a particular phenomenon. I've noticed that fat people they eat more than skinny people. It's clear to me, absolutely, that the people get fat because they eat more. And that's my theory of it. Now, I didn't have any proof. That's an observation that I made. And then some smart aleck comes along and she finds out that, well, that's the partial truth, but people also get fat because of other factors than the fact that they're consuming more food. Their body is processing that food differently. It's retaining more. Now, those are both theories. It seems to me that's just the core of what science is. It tries to explain physical phenomenon or the way somebody thinks or whatever the data is there, that the theory is a way to explain it and to label something a conspiracy theory. I don't know really what that means if you just look at those terms. At least in this context, I'm not really sure what it means.
Yeah, there's something else you said in your talk, Scott, that that the conspiracy theories are too widespread to be a pathology. I'm not sure that's part of the definition. I think maybe we're all a little pathological.
Right. They're common, they're regular.
Yeah.
Doggone it.
Okay, Carl.
Yeah, I've been listening to this interesting conversation about theories. People get off into science all the time. Supposedly we call it a conspiracy postulate. A theory is just a proposed possibility.
Right.
Conspiracy theory is someone's proposed possibility. Now, someone would say, well, that's really interesting. And then you can start saying, well, how many people actually think that that's true or believe in it? And you can get a huge number of people that believe in something that just plain isn't true. And also get a bunch of people that believe in something that is true. You can also have scientists, as an example, in the past, but believed in things that were not true, and it took them a while to disprove it. But you're getting much too rigorous in your definition, I think. There are such things as conspiracy theories, and there are people, my sister was one of them, that actually believed that the military was involved in 9/11. I could not believe it. I almost passed out when she said that. It was all I could do to not make some comment, a derogatory comment. But when people say something and they really, really think it's true, and I've seen so many things in my life where people have absolutely believed they were true. And I think Scott was just pointing out what the sources of this situation is and what causes it to have a huge number of people believe in a theory. Theory is not proved, right? But to the believers, it is proved. Am I making sense? So I'm not clear why that didn't come across somehow in Scott's talk. We've read a number of books about this idea of belief structures and what have you. And I think he did a pretty damn good job of defining it all. I don't really understand how people get off on tangents about science and disproof and 1,000 years from now, science will be crap. Well, we know that, but we're not talking about it. We're talking about something going on today that's there, here and now, and affecting human beings, a lot of them. Anyway, like people won't get shots and listen to the stories they have. Some of them may be even somewhat legitimate. I've heard some people that, yeah, okay, I can understand that, like a nurse said, you must be nuts. Why wouldn't you want to get vaccinated? Well, they start telling you all these stories and blah, blah, blah. You say, well, I don't know. I don't think that's as important as you are emphasizing it to be at this time. Anyway, I'll shut up. I like to talk too much.
I have a request, and since I'm recording, I don't want to go fishing around on my device and possibly interfering with the recording. But could someone else post in the chat a link to a dictionary or Wikipedia definition of theory?
By the way, I think in scientific term theory sounds like it's a little different than our usual usage. I think when we say something is my theory, you're almost inviting people to shoot it down. But I think that's true of the scientific community also. They posted a theory, and if it's standing for 50 years, it's pretty solid. But the idea that it can't be contradicted was never the intended use of the word. Zem.
Yeah, actually two observations, or one observation and one question. So I think the reason, or one of the reasons that conspiracy theories are so difficult to shoot down is because you cannot prove a negative. If someone believes that the US military was involved in 9/11, it is impossible to disprove this logically, right? You cannot prove a negative. You cannot prove that the military was not involved in 9/11. So I think that's one thing. That's just my observation. The second is a question regarding symbolism. For instance, this animation that we saw from 1944, I found symbolism in it. Like it meant something to me. Does this mean I'm conspiratorial? Or that drawing that was posted earlier, right? If you find meaning in things like this, are you being conspiratorial? That's my question.
I think it's not the usual usage of the word conspiratorial. Yeah, I mean, we found meaning in that animation, but we didn't think it was a part of reality. That saves us from the accusation.
Oh, I see. Okay, so we know it's synthetic, but just we find, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Fran, Jim.
First, I wanted to comment on the use of the word theory. Obviously, there is a large difference between the word theory that lawyers use and that scientists use. And I think the great problem is that the scientists ought to change the meanings of the very well-established facts that we found in the universe. And instead of calling it the theory of gravity or the theory of speed of light, call it the verity or something that confirms that it is very well established, although still subject to change with further better evidence. The second thing I wanted to point out was that conspiracy theories seem, and especially at present, to be employed to establish and maintain power. And I think that's what we're really seeing that's disrupting our country at this point and threatening our democracy very gravely. The enormous acceptance of conspiracy theory without any evidence. In fact, all evidence for the great lie is completely contradictory, and yet it's accepted by millions of people. And this is, I think, supported by the unending propaganda that's being fed to these people, and they're entrapped in this propaganda bubble and don't examine external evidence. That's my statement.
Okay, Dana, Jerry. You're muted.
Yeah, well, I understand that one of the most important functions that people had to develop was when they looked at an unknown person or situation to decide whether or not it posed a threat to them. And that this caused kind of a lot of development of the cortex, because it was very complicated. We had to weigh the pros and cons of the situation and decide whether to stay put or to run away. And because we had very few defensive things like teeth and long fingernails and other things, so it's very important for our particular species to think long and hard and quickly about whether something posed a threat or not. And so it's really a really important function that we all do all the time whenever we meet anyone or see a situation, that we have to decide about it, how we're going to react to it. And, you know, a lot of people probably have looked at some of the rather peculiar things that have happened in the last century and thought, you know, what I'm hearing doesn't really explain this to me. And they've come up with an alternate view. And I kind of think of it as kind of a function of imagination too, and creativity. And, you know, and sometimes it's totally wacko or we disagree with it. And sometimes some of these might have some germs of possibility in them. Like I personally think there's something very fishy about 9/11. And I hope I live long enough to find out what really happened. I don't ascribe to any particular theory about it, but I suspect that there's some dark secret there that's going to come out. And so, you know, I think that having conspiracy theories isn't all negative. It seems to me it keeps the questions open, and it doesn't explain away some difficult situation by saying, oh, that could never happen. Oh, our country could never do that. Oh, the army would never do anything like that. Oh, the president would never do that. And so I think it's kind of important to maybe have a few conspiracy theories floating around to kind of keep us uneasy and troubled. That's all I have to say on that.
Well, there's something I want to say too, which is that, you know, Jim said something about theory about that. Even when there's no evidence, if you talk to somebody who's got some kind of crazy idea, they usually can give you a lot of stuff that they consider to be evidence. They're not just saying, I believe it because I believe it. Now they're saying this has happened, this happened, this happened. And you may think that that evidence is totally useless, worthless, bogus, whatever, but he thinks it's real.
And smart people have a way of putting abstract, unrelated facts together and making sense of them.
Yeah.
Better than us humans. Anyway, Kanita, you got your hand up?
Okay. The first thing I wanted to mention was when Dana said you see something and you have to think long and hard and quickly. And those, well, it's just sort of interesting because, well, you have to come up with something quickly, but by definition, you can't think about it long and hard at that point. And that's the danger, is that you have to come up with something right now, and you come up with the best you can quickly. And it, you know, you might even, for example, be in a social situation where you have to say something, right? And you come up with something to say. But that's only, that was just sort of an aside that came because of what I was hearing. But what I initially was thinking of was this is, the topic is about the psychology, and really people in their pattern matching and their desire to be right. People definitely want to be right, and they want to be in a position of higher status. And if you've got what you think is a correct theory, then you know something that other people don't know. And so obviously you would have higher status than the people who haven't figured it out yet. So that's a sort of a psychological impetus to buy into a conspiracy theory. Also, I guess, yes, a theory in science isn't the same as a theory on the street. And I notice that constantly, because just people talking on the street will say, well, I have this theory. It's like, well, no, you have sort of a half-baked hypothesis, maybe.
That's just your opinion, man.
Right. And so your opinion at that point is they'll say, well, that's just your theory, right? But so we've kind of diluted the word theory. But again, for conspiracy theories, yeah, I guess a conspiracy theory, it's always about something, again, that's dangerous. And you have to come up with something now, because it's going to get you if you don't come up with an answer. So again, you've got the pull. Well, it's sort of a, it's carrot and stick thing, right? Because the carrot is that you get to be thought of highly by all the people who are in the same camp. And the stick is that if you don't buy into it, well, like, for example, the various people who are buying into, or claiming to buy into, even if they don't really buy into the big lie, is that if they don't buy into it, they're not going to get reelected because a bunch of their constituents buy into it. And oh no, if you haven't bought into this conspiracy theory, you will lose all the power that you've spent all this trouble gaining, and all of the monetary and other perks that you get from having gotten into the 0.00001% that are actually elected to public office. So it's got a lot of impetus for keeping the theories going, even when they've been debunked by anybody who is willing to do the scientific work on figuring out the truth. That's enough.
Greg.
Yes, I think it's useful to remind us that the use of the scientific method is the best means of discovering the reality of the world we live in, is a core value of humanism, and that it's appropriate for us to use scientific thinking and scientific terminology in describing things, while understanding when other people are using the terms in ways that aren't scientific. So the common use of theory really means hypothesis or belief. And a theory from the scientific point of view is a hypothesis which has a body of evidence from testing to support the hypothesis as being true. And that includes testing to disprove the hypothesis, which has failed to do so. Go on.
Curtis.
Yeah, I really appreciated what you said earlier about kind of the ways people get to those kind of crazy conclusions, because, and of course, QAnon is one of the best and obvious ones because, and it was actually a very wicked smart way of doing it because the person dropped clues, to these people, but they already kind of knew, obviously they already knew what the answer to the puzzle, but they dropped clues knowing that people will put the puzzle together and get this answer. And so once people put the puzzle together and they get the answer, now they're invested in this because, wow, I put this together. I'm smart. I figured out these clues. Now I've got something like she said. Now that gives me status. I can bring this to somebody else and say, wow, can you put this together? Oh, wow, you got the same. You put the puzzle together just like I did. So it's, it's all BS, but Joe Biden isn't, doing anything with kids or drinking their blood. It's all nonsense, but it's just nonsense. But let's just be clear about that. But it is interesting how you can set up something like that and people can buy into it. And a lot of them are, they went to college, really, smart people, engineers, but they buy into it.
Yeah, I remember when Kennedy was assassinated, there were an awful lot of conspiracy, a lot of questionable things going on then. And I was pretty, I had a lot of doubts about the official story. And
you don't believe in the magic bullet?
Well, one of the things that surprised me is he was shot in the back of the head and his head jerked backwards. And I thought that was unlikely until someone showed me a picture of shooting a watermelon. Blasted at a chunk and the watermelon went backwards. But all right, maybe, all right, I can still say I don't know, but I'm willing to accept the official story now.
So there were 7 bullets, apparently, 1 bullet and 7 holes, and that made one think, how is this possible that one shot could have done that?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest bit of conspiracy I ever felt involved with. Sure, we couldn't have said everything. I got notes. I was thinking at some point that the conspiracies kind of remind me of the movie Wagging the Dog, if you remember that. They created a film in a studio of some atrocity being committed in, I don't even remember if it was a real country. But
you wag the dog? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got my hand up.
Oh, so you do. Senna.
Oh. So it's interesting that the people, well, that's not what I want to say. What I want to say is that there is a serious conspiracy theory among a large percentage of the population, a large percentage of Trump supporters. I don't know how universal it is, but I know that many of them believe things that nobody's even mentioned, and they're about us. They believe that that Democrats kill babies and drink their blood and eat them.
Yeah, that's QAnon. That's what I was saying. Yeah.
That's QAnon.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just surprised that something that serious didn't come up. And we have to go to the polls with that around our neck.
But also, I like there's a comment I read, a quote I read I really like, and that is that the word to know is a factual, I think that was a factual word. That is, you only know something if it's true. So you don't even know if you know something. But, we live with a certain degree of certainty. And anything that violates that, such as, I would say, the theory that voting officials all over the countries were dishonest and the recounts were ineffective and the courts did have enough evidence to question the returns. I think that's going too far. It's not unproven, but I'd say it's going too far. Scott,
I think Jane and Jerry were first.
you're right. Okay, Dana.
Yeah, in response to something I've already forgot what it was a minute or two ago, reminds me that when Iraq invaded Kuwait quite a while ago, before we responded, before the U.S. responded, some woman came out and testified about some horrible things that Iraqis are supposed to have done to the Kuwaitis, and that was part of the reason for attacking Iraq. And later it turned out that the woman who came out and testified was actually closely related to an ambassador, and there was some reason to suspect the truth of what she was said. And as near as I can tell, that story is true, that what she was saying was not true. Now, can you sort that out? I don't know. I can't.
You always have to be a little uncertain of tales of atrocities. Who's telling
Well, in a
you
way,
this?
you have to be uncertain about everything. It's like my first physics classes taught these basic things of Newtonian mechanics, and I thought they're all true. But then you get to relativity and find out, well, actually, that stuff is only true at speeds a lot less than the speed of light. So, how accurate is it? Well, it's useful in certain situations and not useful in others. Fortunately, so far, we rarely go anywhere near the speed of light. So far, the Newtonian mechanics stuff, it works fine.
Yeah,
But I guess the point is a lot of this science stuff are approximations to the truth. Ultimately, there's a pragmatic aspect, but does it work for me?
I think what he said before is very true. Science and critical thinking is really, I think, one of the best guides you have. I also like probability theory too, because with some people, the best thing I can say to them is, tip of the hat. I say, okay, maybe it's possible. Is it possible that, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are secretly, hiding children and harvesting their blood? It's a possibility. It is in the realm of possibility. But what's the most likely thing? What's the most likely thing? What's like if you had probability theory, what's most probable? That something that big is going on, or that something else is going on? And you kind of really start looking at what's more probable. And then when you kind of look in that from that perspective, that's really not very probable. So if something isn't really probable, is it even plausible? It's kind of like, is it really even a thing? And so that's the best way I can tease out. But I think for a lot of people, the way their minds work is, I forget the philosopher who said this, but it's like, my memory says that I did that. My pride tells me I didn't do that. My memory yields. Right? So, yeah.
Greg.
Well, I wanted to respond to what he just said there, which is about probability. Statistics is not an easy thing. I think there are a lot of people who really don't know how to evaluate probability. And I also wanted to point you, do you know about Occam's razor?
Take it as a yes.
Okay, well,
Principle of parsimony.
Occam's razor, I'm not going to get it exactly right, but the gist of it, as I understand it, is the simplest explanation is probably the most likely explanation. And that's another way of looking at things, to say that the drinking the blood is unlikely, I think.
You're on.
Yeah, I want to.
We lost Scott along the way.
Hold on. I want to note that we've had mention of several political figures and political parties. And I just want to put in the usual qualification that the Humanist community is incorporated as a religious nonprofit. We do not support or oppose any candidate for political office, or we're not affiliated with any political party. So carry on.
Scott was starting to talk at one point. We lost him.
Are you sure it was me? I do have something to say. I'll jump right in.
Wow.
Well, let me call on Marion. She's got her hand up.
You'd had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. This ties in somewhat with what Jerry just said, but, and you've probably all heard this, but I kind of approach what I think might be a conspiracy theory of someone's with this idea in mind that I'm kind of like at least mentally asking the person, why do you think that this group of people that you're accusing or suspicious of or whatever would ever be that organized to get together with whatever plot that you're thinking? Like, oh, the US military is, well, who in the military, and you think that they're one body, or even if you're selecting 5 people or something, you think they really, plot something, get together, agree, and manage to put into effect whatever they're thinking. And like right now I have someone she dislikes Fauci and Bill Gates. She believes in that theory. Why would those two be getting together on something? I don't know, but so that's enough. You get the idea, I guess.
I'm working on a T-shirt that I'm going to put out where it was the old Obama T-shirt from 2008, where it's like Obama was Superman. He has a suit on and he's ripping his shirt open. It says O. Instead of the letter O, it's going to say Q. It's really Obama. He was the one all along. He was Q. He was the one dropping the clues. It all comes full circle.
That explains
God,
everything.
it was Obama all along. Wow.
Jerry.
Speaking of probabilities, I find it difficult to believe that Curtis is really sitting in an apartment that's submerged beneath the Mediterranean Sea.
Well, it's not only probable, but it's possible. No, I'm here in Stockton, and just to avoid COVID, I've decided to secure myself deep below the Delta to avoid the Delta variant of the virus.
Okay,
But that would be the smartest thing to do.
Jerry's got the tape.
Yeah, in response to what Marion just said, I've heard multiple times people saying, in terms of these conspiracy theories, it says, no, most of the time things can be explained either through stupidity or incompetence.
Let me add that there actually are apartments sitting beneath the surface of the Mediterranean Sea. So it's not entirely improbable.